all on this beautiful Sabbath day. It's actually been a year since the last time. In fact, it's almost exactly 1 year to the day that I was last at at the church in New Milford. Obviously, this year because of the situation with the COVID, we're not able to be together in person. But it's always a pleasure, a wonderful pleasure to be with you all. Um, I'd like to thank the elder for that kind introduction. And I would also like to thank Rhea, my fiance, for joining us all the way from Cavite. I know it's almost 1 o'clock now in the morning, and she and our daughter has stayed up to join us. Usually when I speak, they have been singing for me. They're both very good singers. And they've been quite busy over the last couple of weeks, so they weren't able to put something together. But I'd like to thank them for joining us as well. Before we begin, can we bow our heads for a word of prayer? Dear kind and most wonderful, loving Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for your blessings. We thank you for this beautiful Sabbath day. Thank you, Lord, that you have given us an opportunity to be able to worship you, even though we are not able to physically go inside of the church. We pray, Lord, that you will be with us in these trying times. Be with us today, dear Lord, as we open up your words. We pray that you will open our minds, open our understanding, so that the words that we hear will be from you and they will draw us closer to you. For we pray in Jesus' name, amen. The title of my message today is The Good Seed. You know, usually when I speak, I generally like to get feedback from the audience, and that's by looking directly into your eyes. And usually when I see that people I'm beginning to lose people, I know that it's time to end the sermon. But what I will promise you today, that even though I can't see your reaction, I won't keep you for very long. I'll try to keep it as short as possible, and I pray that you'll be able to follow along with me. So we're talking about the good seed today. Now, what are seeds? Now, seeds are the starting entities of any kinds of plants. This past summer, I planted a garden out on my deck in containers, and I planted a number of things. Some of them did well, some didn't do so well. So I remember I planted some eggplant, some okra, squash, kamote, and even a bitter melon. From the eggplants, I think I got maybe 2 eggplants from like 4 plants that I did. Some of them didn't bear anything at all. And the squash, I didn't get anything at all. And the kamote, there was 1. And the bitter melon, no, I'm sorry, not the kamote. The bitter melon, there was just 1. No, the kamote, that was a different story. So I picked them up at the I picked up the starter plants at the nursery, and I planted them. I watered them every day as I did with all of the other plants, and the camotes, they were looking extremely beautiful. They were vigorous. They are growing well. I put fertilizer on them. Like I said, I watered them every day, and you know, at the end of the season, like with everything else like that I just mentioned, I got a few little things, but on the camotes, when I went to reap them, I realized that the varieties of camotes that I got were not the edible kind. It was a decorative camote. So I wasted all my time all summer planting it and taking care of it, only to find out that it was nothing there. So that was an important lesson for me. Now, among the other things that I planted this summer, I planted some tomatoes, and I got quite a few. I got quite a few tomatoes out of that. I got a lot of green peppers and some hot peppers, and a few other things did extremely well, but some things didn't do well at all. And you know, it all came back to the quality of the seeds. So you know, I've had you know, for some time, a whole bunch of heirloom seeds that I just kept. And I've always actually been very fond of gardening, but it's been a very long time that I've actually planted anything. I was in my new place this summer, so I said, oh, this is an opportunity for me to plant some things. So, and I know a lot of you are into gardening as well. And when you're planting things, in a garden, you start with the seeds. Well, you start with the soil to begin with, the soils, the fertilizers, and of course the seeds. And if the seeds are of good quality, they will germinate, they will grow, and they will bear fruit. If they're not of good quality, like the squash that I planted, then you will get nothing, even after you care for them. And in one of Jesus's most notable parables is the parable of the sower, and that's recorded in Matthew chapter 13, I believe. And I think we all know the story quite well. The sower went forth to sow, and he distributed the seeds, and some of them fell on thorny ground. Some of them fell among thorns. Some of them fell on barren land, and some of them fell on good soil. And the ones that fell in stony places, they didn't really do well. And the one that fell among thorns, the thorns choked them, and the ones that fell on good ground, they bore good fruit. So seeds are actually very important in anything we do, and it's actually an important object lesson for us, as Christ demonstrated. The parable of the sower is indicative to us of spreading the message of God. It is our responsibility as followers of Christ to share with others the message of God's second coming and the message of serving God. That's our responsibility. And our responsibility is to share the message. But then there are those who will hear the message. Some of them will ignore it. Some of them, they will hear it and they will say, oh yeah, this is actually a good idea, and they'll get started, with the process of following Christ. But then for whatever reason, within a short time, then they lose interest, and they no longer continue to adhere to the teachings of Christ. But then there are those among us who will, and we are all actually a part of that group, of one of these groups. There are those for whom the seeds take root and they continue to grow and become a very good influence within the church and within the society. So now, at a time like this, with everything that we have seen happening around us, particularly in this past year, we know for a fact that the end of time is near. We look around us, we see everything that's happening, and these things were predicted in the Bible to happen in the end of time. And it seems like in the last few years, like almost every year, something worse is happening than the year before. I remember back in 2005 when I was in Louisiana when Hurricane Katrina hit, and they said that was the worst storm that ever hit the United States. That was 2005. That was like the worst thing that ever happened here. Not just a few years before that, it was September 11, 9/11. Nothing like that had ever happened in America. And now this year, I think this is like the worst year ever with what's happening with COVID. And, that's, I actually want to spend a bit of time talking about it because it's still here with us. It's not this COVID epidemic that we're having this year. It is not by any means the only time in the history of the earth, of our world, that there has been a pandemic like this. We hear mentions of the 1918 flu pandemic that killed millions and millions. Also, we've heard references to the Black Death in Europe that killed close to 50 million, 40 to 50 million people in Europe and Asia. In fact, it was believed at that time that those pandemics killed like half the population of Europe. The Black Death killed half the population of Europe at that time. So, but and incidentally, the thing that actually caused that pandemic in Europe is the plague, the bubonic plague. It's a bacterium called Yersinia pestis, and that's actually still around with us. Probably not the exact same species, but that's still around with us. It's spread by rats and so forth. But the reason why it was so deadly back then is because it wasn't modern times. There were no antibiotics or anything like that to deal with it. And even now with COVID, if this pandemic had happened in 1950, we would have been much worse off than we are today. I mean, as of this morning, over 260,000 people have already died just in the United States alone from COVID. That's a number that's actually staggering. So just imagine that this year, over 250,000 people have died from one disease. That's unprecedented. And luckily, medical science is of such now that they've actually been able to rush some treatments into make certain treatments available in a very short time. And it looks like they may even have a vaccine by the end of the year into next year. But it's unprecedented that something like this could happen and could be so deadly. For years, medical scientists have and microbiologists have alluded to the fact that something like this could happen. And in fact, just within the last 30 years, there have been other viral diseases that have killed millions. HIV, for example, has killed 35 million people worldwide, and that's something that came to pass in our lifetimes. So, so here we have these diseases that never heard of them before, and all of a sudden they're coming around and they're killing millions and millions of people. And I just maybe 4 or 5 years ago there was chikungunya. That's something that I'd never even heard about it. And until someone called and said that my mother has chikungunya, then I actually went and looked it up, and I found out that it was something that used to be endemic in Africa. But then all of a sudden, people down in the Caribbean, which is where my mother was, they're getting it, and we were wondering how is it getting there? What happened? What's going on? What's happening? Why are all of these deadly things coming up to the surface so far? And these are not by any means the most deadly diseases that we've ever seen. Ebola is far worse than any of these. The only thing about Ebola is that when you get infected with it, you die so quickly that you actually don't have a chance to spread it to anyone else. With COVID-19, like you could have it for weeks and maybe even months and not even be aware of it, and you're spreading it to other people, and they're getting it as well. So so this is just one of those things that we're seeing that is really unprecedented, that really let us know that the end of time is really short. It's really coming up on us. Just a few weeks ago, there were these floods in the Philippines, in the northern Philippines, that that are unprecedented. And if you guys remember back, it was actually 20 years ago when there was a typhoon Hainan that at the time when that typhoon hit the Philippines in 2000, I believe, that was the worst, or whatever year it was. It might have been a little bit later than that. They said those were the strongest winds ever recorded on Earth. And I've actually seen the pictures, and I know that I've seen like solid concrete houses just blown over. I used to work with a missionary group there in Leyte, and I remember they lost an entire mango plantation. It's just such a weird thing to see a fully grown mango tree that's almost 100 years old just ripped up out of root because the winds were so strong. So these kinds of things, I mean, these kinds of things are really unprecedented. And one other thing I'd like to mention, this year I've been reading the biography of Elon Musk. He's one of the premier industrialists of our time. He's believed to be one of the brightest people ever. He is the guy who started Tesla and SpaceX, and he's very bright, one of the premier minds of our generation. And a journalist was interviewing him one time, and the journalist said to him, "What scares you about the way our world is?" And he thought about it for a second, and he said, "Well, the way they're developing these robots nowadays, that is really scaring me." And the reason why he's being scared is, and I don't know if you guys have been following the news, but these guys have been developing robots with artificial intelligence. As a matter of fact, there's actually a very well-known project that used to that was being developed at Facebook, and they basically developed they had these computers with artificial intelligence, and they wanted to see if they could teach the computers how to trade among themselves, how to like perform commerce among themselves. And so in the process of doing that, and in fact, I think they said that the aim of the project was to be able to have a machine that can communicate fluently with humans. But what actually happened, something that was really scary, even to me as an engineer, these machines, they're talking to each other, and they developed their own language, and they're communicating with each other in this language. And the guys who wrote the programs, who developed those machines, they had no idea what they were saying. So just imagine that. So they actually got scared, to tell you the truth, and they ended the project, because you know, just imagine you have these machines that they're sitting around you, they're talking to each other, you have no idea what they're saying or what they're planning. So one of the things that Elon Musk had said is that there are these robots that they're developing, killer robots, and these things, they you can basically program them to be autonomous, let them make the decision on what to do. And we're talking about robots that have the ability to kill people. I mean, and that's just how it is. So all of these things are happening, and these are things that are happening now. This is not stuff that's happening in the future. One of the other things that has that people have been talking about recently is colonizing Mars. People, they've been talking about it over the last few years, and they're actually people who are actively working on this. Now, why would they want to colonize Mars when we have a perfectly good Earth here? Is it because these guys know that they're planning, that something is being planned or something could possibly happen? And these, I'm talking about, these are some of the brightest people around us, the brightest people on Earth. They see what's happening and they're like, you know, we really have to get out of here. So, you know, but, you know, as Christians, these things don't bother us so much. When we see them happening, we expected them. We knew they were going to happen. Our Lord has already warned us about it. And so, and that's the reason why he brought us here. He put us here, and he gave us the message. He brought the message to us. You know, in the scripture reading this morning from Revelation, it's, and I'll just repeat it. It says, and the dragon was wroth with the woman, and went to make war with the remnant of her seed, that keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. See, the woman spoken about in Revelation 12, it's the church. It's God's church, and the remnant portion of that church is, we believe that that is to be us. I mean, I'm not a scholar of Bible prophecy, but and other scholars have said, yes, this is what it means. It's we are God's remnant church on earth. We have the testimony of Jesus Christ. And so now the dragon is wroth with the woman and went to make war. So now who's the dragon? The dragon is Satan. And he wants to make war. Now, why does he want to make war with the remnant of God's seed? Remember, we talked earlier about what seeds are supposed to do? Now, seeds are supposed to be planted and they're supposed to produce fruit. Now, if you somehow manage to damage the seeds, if you plant them, they won't grow, they won't produce anything. So how is Satan going about his war, as the Bible puts it? Now, like I said, we are living in the last days, and when you see what's happening around us, you have no doubt. You have no doubt that things are just not as they should be. How is Satan planning to launch his attack? Well, first of all, by distracting us from the word of God. Like if you could say, he realizes that if he could simply get people not to read God's word, not to listen to God's words, that is a victory for him. Because those are the things that you need when you plant a tree. Assuming that each of us as a Christian represents a plant that's growing. If we are deprived of fertilizer, of water, we won't grow. And for us, fertilizer and water is God's word. So if he can simply get us to distract us from that, you have to get up early in the morning to go to work. So you don't have time to read the Bible. You don't have time to pray. And, when you get to your job, there's so many things that you have to do. And before you know it, the day's over. You just have enough time to get back home and maybe get something to eat, to get a shower and go to bed, and have no time for God at all. So that's one of the things that Satan is using to help to keep us away from God's word. Another one is the television. That when I grew up, I was lucky enough to grow up in the Caribbean. And I remember when we were growing up, there were, I believe, 2 or 3 television stations that we had access to, and I know there was one in my country, and it only operated from 5 p.m. to midnight every day, except on the weekends. But now we live in this country where first of all, there's television 24 hours a day, but it's not just, and there's so many of them. And now there are new technologies that are available that not just gives you access to all the television stations or television channels within the United States. You can get access to every single television channel in the world. Like they have these small devices that you could buy and connect it up to the internet and connect it to your TV, and you could see television stations in every single country in the world. You could just go and get one of these devices, and any movie that you can think of, any kind of show that you can think of, you can find it there, and it doesn't cost you anything. Just imagine that. So with this plethora of easily available entertainment, this is something that works very, very hard to keep us away from Christ, to distract our attention from God's words. The Seventh-day Adventist doctrine is designed not just to lead people to Christ, but if you remember earlier in the Sabbath school lesson on Sunday and Monday's lesson, there we talked about Christian education, and Christian education is designed specifically. It's something that we Christian education as defined by the Seventh-day Adventist Church, as laid out by Sister White in her book Education. That is, if you actually think about it, and it's something that Satan, I think, tries to keep from the world. But I do a lot of missionary work from time to time, and my fiance, she actually has an active ministry that, in Cavite. Every weekend she goes out and she feeds the homeless and stuff. But the Seventh-day Adventist message, Seventh-day Adventist concept of education is really designed more than anything else to help to lift people out of poverty. And if you and I can talk about it from my own experiences from where I grew up. If every single Seventh-day Adventist family that was in our neighborhood, they have all done well. They've when you go to a Seventh-day Adventist, education is designed in such a way that and in fact they used to say that if you just make it to an Adventist college, they'll guarantee you that you'll have an education. Sister White, who wrote the book Education and who actually made those proposals, she was actually present when Atlantic Union College was started in 1884, I believe, so somewhere around there. And and again, the idea was that a student who comes to school there, even if they don't have any money, the church makes, generally, or the school finds a way for them to be able to work while attending classes and be able to finish their degree in 5 years. Now, in that same year, 1884, another college was started in Tuskegee, Alabama by Booker T. Washington. Now, I don't know if you know who Booker T. Washington is, but he is a Black American. He was born into slavery. And in 1884, that was 19 years after slavery ended in the United States. So there were all these Blacks who used to be slaves. And so people were talking about, well, what can we do with these people to help them to adapt, these former slaves, to help them to adapt into a country? You know, they need skills and stuff like that. So Tuskegee University was, Tuskegee Institute was started as a college to educate former slaves. Now, bear in mind, these are people that didn't have any money because they didn't get paid as slaves. So the institution was started, and the idea was that they could come there and go to school, and they would work and pay for their pay their way through school, and in 5 years they would have their degrees. That this is something, and the reason I mention it is because Booker T. Washington got the idea for structuring the school like that from reading the writings of Ellen G. White. And incidentally, just an interesting historical fact: both Booker T. Washington and Sister White, they both died the same year, 1915. So this is something that we, as Adventists, that this is something that we have, that we really owe it to ourselves and owe it to the world, to share it with the world. You know, and it's not the only thing. It's not the only thing that we have at which we have excelled. Our health message also, you know, is presented to us by Sister White in a book, The Ministry of Healing. The messages that are in that book, they are designed to get us to remain healthy, or to live a healthy lifestyle. Now, it is way easier to stay healthy than it is to get healthy if you get sick. And you know, I work at a hospital where they specialize in treating cancer, and it might come as a shock to you that that hospitals, you know, institutions like hospitals, they're not really there to prevent you from getting sick. And as a matter of fact, if you don't get sick, they don't make any money. You know, whether it be cancer, heart disease, any one of these exotic diseases. I mean, they're really good at treating them, but these medicines are very, very, very expensive. The messages that we teach, they actually teach you how to avoid getting those illnesses. And that's something that's unique amongst us as Seventh-day Adventists. And some of you are probably familiar with the book, The Blue Zones. And the blue zones are areas on Earth where people live longer than anyone else. And in the entire world, in the entire United States, there's only one of those blue zones. There's 5 in the world: one in Japan, one in Italy, one in Costa Rica. There's one here in the United States, and it slips my mind where the other one is. But the one in the United States is actually the Seventh-day Adventist community around Loma Linda. And they actually did a documentary on it, and people live way longer. And so they went there and they were trying to study, well, what is it that these people are doing that makes them live so long? And they have come to the conclusion that it is the diet and the fact that they observe the Sabbath. They said that that actually played a very, very significant part in the health of Seventh-day Adventists. And they say that the part that the Sabbath actually plays is, you know, on Sabbath, we leave everything behind. And we unwind, we get rid of all of the stress that that's been on us for the entire week. And so our bodies are rejuvenated, our minds are rejuvenated to face the new week. And they say that that is something that is actually, that contributes significantly to the longevity of Seventh-day Adventists. So, you know, this is something that we have, which the world doesn't have. And this is something that, this is part of the reason why Satan is making such a degree of war against God's remnant people. Because if people know that you stay away from doing this, from these things, and you can be healthier, or if you go and get an Adventist education, that will lift you and your family out of poverty for all your generations to follow. That's what we have, and that's the reason why it is important for us to share it with others. We have there's a lot of distraction for us even within our churches. And I actually had a rather unpleasant experience recently. I got a message from a sister in one of our churches, and it was actually an apology. And I was like, "What's this girl apologizing to me for?" And she said that she had been speaking about me, I guess gossiping about me. And I was like, well, the first thing that came to mind is, wow, your life must be really dull if you don't have anything better to do with your time than to gossip about me. Like, I have like the dullest life you can possibly imagine. Like, I didn't even want to know what was said. But I just say that to say that in this time, we have an awesome responsibility to lead people to Christ. And as Christians, we have a responsibility to be an example in everything that in what we say, in what we do, in the way we relate to people. When people see us and they know that we are Seventh-day Adventists, they expect certain things of us. And if we are presenting inappropriate messages to them about how we are or how we should be, that's not. I mean, that's Satan, doing something to damage the seeds. And remember, in order for us to raise Christians who grow up to love the Lord and to serve the Lord, we have to present and make good seeds. That's part of our responsibility as Christians. So I just want to just as I end, I just want to share with you one experience that I've had, and this is something else that this is one of those things that lets you know that the end of time is near. Because I mean, there are all of the disasters that we see happening around us. There's the lots and lots of distractions, and a lot of those things are keeping us away from the things that are actually from a lot of the things that Satan's actually doing, and it's going pretty much unnoticed. And one of the things that has happened in recent years is the resurgence of spirituality, of devil worshiping. And I'm going to share, and I grew up, like I said, I'm a third generation Seventh-day Adventist. So I grew up in a very, very strong Adventist home. And so we were taught not to believe certain things. We looked at the examples of our parents and we followed them. And we used to hear things and stuff, but we never really believed them. But I want to share with you an experience that I had. Some of you know that I was actually a soldier in the United States Army. And one of the things that the soldiers in the Army, part of our job is to protect the country. But one of the things that most of us don't consider is that in the Army, and in fact, this is something that I saw when I was there in the Army, they have complete freedom of religion. So, and I remember this actually happened when I was there. I remember I saw an article in the Army Times magazine, and the title of the article was "Wiccans and Pagans Petitioning the Army to Recognize Their Holy Days." Wiccans and pagans. Now, these are guys who are devil worshippers, as we know it. And I mean, they're not shy about it at all. So even in the United States Army, there are these guys who are seeking the right to practice Satanism as members of the United States Army. And well, so it wasn't just that article that I read, but one of my roommates, when I was actually I'll get back to him. One day, this young guy, a soldier in my unit, he was a medic. He came into he came into the clinic. He had just recently gotten married. And he said, guys, take a look at this. I was going over one of our sessions, as he puts it, and this is what I found. And now, what are these sessions that he was talking about? Now, a few months earlier, one of the guys who happened to be my roommate, he had gotten himself a Ouija board. And for those of you who know what a Ouija board is, it's actually marketed as a toy by, I think, Parker Brothers, or one of those big American toy companies. But it's actually a device that's used in spiritual ceremonies to communicate with spirits. And so my roommate got this, and I didn't know he had gotten it. And I remember one evening I was coming into the barracks, and I saw a bunch of guys sitting out in the lobby, and they were sitting around a table, and they were, I came in and I saw what they were doing, and they were using that thing. They were using that Ouija board, and the way it works is that you ask this thing. There was a certain. It came with instructions, and there was there was the name of the entity that they communicated with. And you ask a question and it gives you an answer. And, it spells it out. Two people have to put their hand on the thing and it goes to the letters and it spells it out. And so they were doing that. And so like, I remember this one guy, he was from Puerto Rico. And he said, no, come on, you guys are making this up. There's no way that thing is saying the right thing. And he said, well, if it's correct, then why don't you ask it the name of my grandmother? He's the only guy there from Puerto Rico, so nobody would know. And the thing spelled it out, and like he was terrified. And things like that were happening with them as they communicated with Sting. So much so that like after several months, like all of the guys who were doing it, they got scared and they quit doing it with him. So back to the guy now that came in one day with that paper, and one time they were they were in the middle of a session, and they asked the entity, will Kurt ever get married? And it says yes. And who will he marry? And the thing spelled the name Sarah. And then he goes, oh yeah, he doesn't know what he's talking about, because my girlfriend's name is Dana, is what he said. Well, would you know, 3 months later, I think he was at a nightclub or something like that, and he met this girl. Her name was Sarah. Within a week, they were married. And so it was he happened to have been the guy who was recording the things that night. And then when he brought it in and he said, hey guys, look at this, I just saw this thing. And it was from one of our sessions. And it predicted that I would get married to someone named Sarah. Of course, the marriage didn't last. I mean, I think after 3 months, they were divorced or something like that. But these are the kinds of things that actually are still happening. And these are actually becoming more and more common. And from what I've been seeing, a lot of the people who are engaging in these kinds of practices, people who are in positions of wealth and power. When I was growing up, the only kinds of people who used to believe in that stuff is people who we thought, were uneducated and whatnot. But I later found out that some of the information that those guys were using, they actually came from a book. There's actually a book on this stuff. And I was actually helping a friend do some research the other day on the topic, and I found that there's a book that teaches you all of this stuff. I didn't read it, and I'm not going to say the name of the book, but I was just surprised that these things are just becoming so prominent now. I mean, I'm telling you, brethren, we really are living in the last days. We really are at the end of time. I mean, there's so many bad things that are happening, and the potential for so much more. And that's why it's important that we be aware of this war that is going on around us, that Satan is waging against God's people. We are close to the end, my brethren. Our redemption is drawing near. Let us remember God's words, and let us commit ourselves to being that good seed, to spreading the message, the word of God, for being an example for others and to others. That's my prayer for us today. Amen.
Amen.